Of the Bible story. We're involved right now in the story of the life of Christ. You might subdivide that story into, first of all, the years of preparation. And then comes the beginning of Jesus' ministry. And then the great Galilean ministry, followed by the period of retirement, times when Jesus was maybe looking to work more with the disciples one-on-one to get away from the crowds. And then we have the close of Jesus' ministry, which we're studying this quarter, this last part of this life of Christ, the close of Jesus' ministry. And then we focus on the last week, the resurrection of Christ and the exaltation of Christ. So we might say there are 8 segments of our study of the life of Christ. What a glorious thing it is to be able to come together and read the words and deeds of our Lord. It's a marvelous thing. So we're involved in that study, and we're in this period of the close of Jesus' ministry. We're looking at just at the last few weeks before the time in which he will go to Jerusalem to offer himself up for us. We left off the story last time in Luke chapter 14. And we find in this chapter Jesus accepting an invitation to eat in the house of one of the chief Pharisees. You know, the Pharisees, at least as far as we're told, didn't have so much of an official, formal hierarchy. To be a chief Pharisee just meant that you carried a lot of weight, that you had a lot of, maybe carried a lot of respect from your teaching, or maybe you were connected with the Sanhedrin. And so, for all these things, the Pharisee, a chief Pharisee, would be just somebody who was well thought of. And the Lord accepted these invitations. Now, we read back in the 11th chapter, I believe it was, Luke, about Jesus going into one of these situations, and it turning out to be rather explosive visit, as this Pharisee was amazed that Jesus didn't wash his hands the right way, and Jesus was rather amazed that he had the audacity to talk about things like that when he was such a rotten hypocrite, and let him know that. You know, sometimes these visits went very clear negative charge, you know? But it seems to me here, though it starts off in a rocky way. First part of this chapter, you remember, there's a man there who is afflicted. He has what the old French calls dropsy, a swelling, and he's struggling with that. And it's the Sabbath day, by the way. And the Lord asked, he said, "You reckon you're all right to heal this fellow? Leave good on the Sabbath day?" And he knew what they thought. They didn't have the gall to answer. And so he healed him. And then he said, you know, not one of you, if you had an animal that was fell into a pit on the Sabbath, they wouldn't pull it out. You understand the difference between that and what the Sabbath law forbade. Why do you act like you don't? And then what we find following that, verse 7 and continuing, is a picture of Jesus, it seems to me, not so much blasting them, but trying to help some. There must have been a better crowd here. Must have been some folks that he thought he could help. And so you find, for example, in verse 7, he put forth this parable to those that were bidden, when he marked how they chose out the chief rooms, saying to them, "When you are bidden of any man to a wedding, sit not down in the highest room, lest a more honorable man than thou be bidden of him. And he that bade thee, and him come and say to thee, give this man place, and thou began with shame to take the lowest room, the lowest place." You know, you're sitting around a table, and there's some places that are more honorable and some places that are less honorable, some places are the kids' table. And so the idea is, don't take honor for yourself. Let that be granted to you if it comes to you at all. When you're bidden, verse 10, go and sit down in the lowest room. And he that bade thee come and say, "Friend, go up higher, and thou shalt have worship in the presence of them that sat at meat with thee. Whosoever exalts himself shall be abased, and he that humbles himself shall be exalted." Well, that's a lesson that's needed in this world. It's taught over and again. A very practical lesson about life. I suppose the Lord taught it because he thought there might be some who could yet hear it. In verse 12, he continues his efforts to reach those who are reachable. He said also to those that bade him, when thou makest a dinner or a supper, call not thy friends or thy brethren, neither thy kinsmen or thy rich neighbors, lest they also bid thee again, and a recompense be made thee. When you make a feast, call the poor and the maimed and the lame and the blind, and thou shalt be blessed, for they cannot recompense thee. Thou shalt be recompensed at the resurrection of the just. I don't think you say this wrong to eat dinner with your friends, but the idea is when you think about making an effort, he said what you ought to recognize is a place of charity and a role of benevolence. If you're trying to gain somebody's favor, let it not be your rich neighbor, but instead let it be the Lord who will see your act of mercy and bless you accordingly. In verse 15, the Lord continues. Somebody spoke up and said, he said, blessed is he that shall eat bread of the kingdom of God. I suppose there was something about what the Lord had been saying, talking about the rooms at the